Hello and welcome to this tutorial of Mercalli version 4 SAL Plus. That is one long name. Let me explain it to you. Mercalli version 4 is the latest update and upgrade to the Mercalli stabilization series. It's version 4. SAL stands for standalone application, and the plus is because they've added an extra feature. Not only does it stabilize your video now, you also get CMOS correction. What a lot of people don't realize is oftentimes the shaky video that you see coming from some of the modern cameras is not just bad footage, bad shooting, but it's issues with your CMOS sensor that's creating a wobble, a skew, a jello look. Well, Mercalli has found a way in version 4 to actually include into the stabilization process CMOS correction. Enough of the details. Let's jump in and see how Mercalli version 4 works. First thing we need to do is open a file. There are multiple ways to do that. We can click up here on the menu icon for import media. We can drag and drop from my computer into the work area, or my preferred way is to click here to open media. So I'm going to go find a clip. I'm going to select the first one in my folder that I've set aside for this tutorial. Here we go. We've got some footage of a crappy, rainy, partially snowy, foggy day. Needed some footage for the tutorial, so I took my Phantom drone out. I don't have a gimbal on it, so I was sure to get some shaky footage since it was very windy. And also, there's a good chance I was going to get some CMOS issues in the form of rolling jello. And sure enough, I got them all. So here's the clip I got. I know there's a spot I want to mess with in the area of 145, so I'm going to find a good spot somewhere around there. Looks pretty good. Now I need to set an endpoint. There's a couple ways to do it. I can either drag a trim point this way, set an end, or if I click I on my keyboard, that will set the endpoint, or a third way is to click on the little trim buttons over here and it will set an endpoint at your timeline cursor. Then I need to find where I want my clip to end. I know it's just after I fly over the car. And along about there looks pretty good. I'm going to set an out point and we have a clip. As you can see, it's rather shaky from the wind, and also there's, if you look closely, some issues with like a rolling wave through our video. That's called by many jello or CMOS jello. Mercalli version 4 now has a way to clean that up and fix it. Let's see what we can do. Need to stop my video. First thing I'm going to do is come over here to my rolling shutter compensation. We can turn that off, and when we analyze our video, it's just going to stabilize with what it sees. If we turn on the rolling shutter compensation, then we have some options that are new to version 4 of Mercalli that are going to help clean up those wobbles and waves that we saw over here. The default is skew. All skew is going to do is correct things like bent over flagpoles or light poles or telephone poles or trees from a side-to-side pan. We don't have any of that in here, but we do have some of that rolling jello through there, so I'm going to see what my other options are. There's jello wobble quickly, there's jello wobble precise, and there's vibration waves, which is strong. The wobble quickly is going to process and analyze the CMOS issues very fast and do as good a job as it can, as quick as it can. The jello wobble precise is going to spend more time on the processing and fix the jello a little bit better. And then the vibration waves gives us some really crazy options. We can select stars for complexity, or we can use a drop down and find some more advanced features. We're not going into that for this tutorial. We're saving that for an advanced tutorial that we're going to be covering at a later time. I'm going to pick for this clip the jello precise because I want to see some improvement in that rolling jello that I'm seeing. So I'm going to click on that. The next thing I'm going to do is come over here to my smooth camera path. There are some options here. There's an action cam, glide camera, rock steady, and forensic. I'm going to select the universal camera. Your footage may vary and your camera selection may vary. For the most part, I've seen that universal camera does a pretty good job on most footage that I work with. So for this particular example, I'm just going to leave it on universal camera. The next option is used camera optics. This is a neat new feature in version 4 of Mercalli. What it does is it gives you options to actually select the exact camera you're using. And what has happened is Mercalli has gone out to some of the camera manufacturers and learned the science behind some of their fisheye or wide-angle lenses, so that when it stabilizes your footage, the stabilization process doesn't send your footage into some crazy things that actually make it worse, because that fisheye warped look is getting enhanced by the stabilization process. They keep it more in check, and it's a much cleaner stabilization using one of these settings if you have the actual camera and setting that they have specified. I shot this on my GoPro Hero 2, which they have, but I shot it on 1080 medium. I did not shoot it on 1080 wide, so I'm going to come up and just use the generic medium setting. Okay, that's about all we need to do to get ready, so let's analyze our video by clicking right here. Okay, we have an analyzation progress screen. There's a couple things to note here. First step is we're analyzing the CMOS sensor. That's where Mercalli is actually looking at the sensor and the output and figuring out how it's creating those distortion issues. Then it's going to set about fixing them, which is what it's doing now, correcting the CMOS distortions. This particular portion takes a very long time depending on the complexity of your clip and the complexity of your settings up here. After this is done, it's going to analyze your camera movement and actually do the stabilization. This could take anywhere from a few seconds to many minutes depending on the length of your clip and how complex the CMOS issues are. Also, there's a CMOS map which gives you a visual display of some of the issues it's finding. You can see the different colors coming through here. Those are the actual waves that it's finding and it's trying to correct in the analyzation process and the correction process of those CMOS distortions. So that every time you see those colors change, it's finding something new to analyze. After the CMOS is fixed, it analyzes your camera movement and then it's done. Okay, we've now stabilized our video. Let's play it, see how it looks. It looks much more stable, and there is a modest improvement in the jello here, but then again there wasn't a lot in this clip compared to what we'll see later. Okay, if we really want to see how it did, I can come over here and do a horizontal compare. This is a kind of a neat feature. If I click horizontal compare, then this is the uncorrected side, this is the corrected side, so we'll be able to see how the stabilization worked, how well it worked. We might be able to see some of the lesser results of our jello. Let's try the vertical compare. Unfixed, fixed. You can see the jello is a little less noticeable down here, so it has cleaned that up a little bit. I'm going to go back to view result and stop it right there. Okay, there's another option up here called view source. If I click here, it's going to go back to my original source. Now you saw how wobbly my video was. I mean, look at it. This is my original source. Look how wobbly that is. To fix that, you would think the software is going to have to zoom in a lot and have some room to work to correct that. Well, look, the result, the source, very, very, very minimal zoom in. Let's look at a few more of the features here on the timeline. I'm going to use my zoom in feature down here on my timeline, and you can see the area that I have highlighted that I'm working with, and these graphs kind of show you a waveform of what Mercalli is doing. Let's look at some of our options over here and up here now. There's an avoid border. If I slide that, it's also the same as this border scale option over here. It was set by default at 40%. That's where it determines how much zoom is needed to fix your problem. So if you're not happy with what's there and you maybe want it a little smoother, you could zoom that in a little bit more. You're going to lose a little resolution every time you do. There's a pan shot smoothing. You can work with that and tweak that to your liking as much as you need. There's a roll balance. There's all kind of features in here. We're not going to dive into all of them, but I want to let you know that there's an almost unlimited number of ways you can tweak your video. Every video is different. You're not going to find one setting that's going to work for everything. You may have to try a couple of things on each clip you bring in here to get the optimal results. quick and dirty, it's going to work pretty well oftentimes. But if you really need to get something for a big production or a really quality shot, you may have to try it a couple of times till you find those perfect settings. Let's look at a few other things. We've got a dashboard here. If I click on the dashboard, the compass, that's our roll. You see right here, the roll gets turned on and off. So this is kind of a readout, a dashboard readout of what the roll is doing in the correction and how it's working. If we click the play button, we can see like an artificial horizon there, sort of where we're off level and not level. All right, the shift just shows you some information. Tilt, if you turn that on, then your pan balance and tilt balance comes on. It was off for this particular setting, so we're going to leave it. The G-force is really just information to show you how hard and some of your moves were. The suppress is an interesting feature. Down here we'll see in another clip that we're going to work with, if these lines right here are too big and they go too fast, or the stabilization is too intense, this suppress will turn red, and then I will show you in a later clip how to fix that. But if I click on that, you can see it turns off the avoid border up here for best stabilization, which best stabilization may not be what you want. I will explain that here momentarily. Here's something else that's really cool. See this little feature right here, best border? If I click on there and click on forensic view, look at this. This is kind of what you see on your screen, and this is how much it's had to zoom in. And if you play it, you can just kind of see scientifically how Mercalli is doing its magic. I kind of find this fascinating. If you leave it this way, it's going to export this way, so you probably don't want to go there. The nerd in me finds this very fascinating, so I can literally see how hard it's working and what it's doing. I'm going to set that back to best border because that's what I really want, and I'm going to stop that because we don't need it playing. These border options are all part of a new dynamic zoom in feature that Mercalli has created. This dynamic zoom feature minimizes the amount of zoom needed to stabilize your video, thus it gives you the maximum resolution and view area. There are two other things here I want to show you. There's a noise reduction sharpness. This is something new. If you were shooting some footage at night or in a low light, a lot of these action cams have small sensors and they just don't look real good in low light. If you got this grainy footage, then you've got a little bit of a noise reduction here. You can turn this down. It's obviously going to soften your footage, as you can see in my footage. But what that does is it also cleans up some of the grain. If by chance you have some footage that possibly zoomed in a little more than you may have liked and it got the footage a little soft, a little blurry, well, you can turn the sharpness up. Most editing software has this now, and you can see my footage is getting a little sharper, but you know what? Too much sharpness and it gets really ugly. You can see in the sidewalk here in the grass I'm getting a lot of artifacts and a lot of things that I don't want. So a little goes a long way with the sharpness. I'm going to pretty much leave that alone. This keep camera dynamic is the next thing I want to show you. What that does is if you had handheld footage or footage from a drone, it needs to look like it has motion to it. It needs to look like you were shooting it by hand or it was being flown. If you turn this off, it's going to try and correct your footage like it was sitting on a tripod. Now, if you were filming your kid playing soccer or football and you were filming from the sidelines from a stationary position, maybe you want to turn that function off so that your footage does look like it sat on a tripod, because literally you're not moving, you just got a little camera shake from your breathing and the natural fidgeting of your body. So that's what the keep camera dynamic does. I had to ask the experts at Mercalli and proDAD what that function was, and they explained it to me, and it made a lot of sense once that was done. Okay, we've showed you some of those features. Let's dive into another clip and try a few different things. I'm going to import another clip. I'm going to select this one here. And here we have some footage shot the next day. There was still some snow around, although much of it had melted. It wasn't near as foggy. It was still overcast. The light was a little brighter, so my footage looked a little better. And there wasn't quite as much wind to deal with. So I didn't get as much of that wobble, rolling shutter jello stuff. But I remember there is a spot around the 4:30 mark after I go by the flagpole where I'm going to fly over this monument. That looks like the spot right in there. So I'm going to set an endpoint, and then I fly over the monument, climb a little altitude for some scenery, and I'm going to set an out point. I think I went a little too far. Let me back that up just a little bit, reset my out point. Okay, let's come up here and mess with the settings a little bit. This one didn't have much rolling shutter at all that I could even see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the rolling shutter compensation. This just means that when it analyzes the video, it's not going to even look at any CMOS issues whatsoever. Since I didn't have very many and it looked pretty good to me in the raw footage, I'm going to see how version 4 of Mercalli handles this without having to worry about any CMOS, see if it's still going to do a good job of the stabilization process. Again, on my cameras, I'm going to leave it at universal camera because I find it just does a pretty good job. Over here for my camera optics, this particular day I knew I wanted to mess with some wide footage, so I actually used my GoPro Hero 2 and I put it on wide mode so I could use this setting right here. Just in the event that there was any warp in that horizon, the stabilization process was not going to make it go crazy and actually make my footage worse. That's really all I'm going to change in this one. Let's see how it does on the Analyze. As you can see, it just went to the Analyze camera movement right away. It's going really fast. It's not finding a whole lot of wobble in my footage or shake in my footage, so we have finished already. It was very quick. Let's see what it looks like. It's looking pretty good. Love flying over stuff like that. That looks like a pretty good clip. You know, I think we're just going to hold on to that and keep those settings and save it for later in our program when we encode our final footage. I'm going to go over to Import Media and I'm going to select this last file in my folder. This one is actually some footage I shot with some Sony action cams mounted on my bicycle, and I found this really great gravelly road that was under construction in my community, and I wanted to really get some nasty footage. I'm going to set my endpoint because I know I want it there. Now look at this footage. Doesn't look too bad here, but wait till I hit this construction. That is some pretty ugly stuff, and there aren't many stabilizers out there. In fact, other than Mercalli version 4, I don't know that there are any out there that can do what Mercalli is about to do to this footage. So we're going to hit stop and set my out point. I wanted to set the out point just after those barrels. That looks like a pretty good spot. Hit my out point. Now, over here in our media bin, you can see I've got 3 clips lined up. The first one I did, the one I just finished, and here's my new one. I'm going to go back to my settings tab so you can see some of the sliders over here and some of the settings based on some of the different functions I may or may not trigger on this particular clip. For this one, we've obviously got some wobble. I'm just going to select the jello wobble. Again, the vibration waves is where the magic will really happen. We're going to cover that again in our advanced tutorial coming at a later time. But for now, we're going to select the jello wobble. You will see a marked increase in the quality of this video just with that setting there. For my used camera optics, I'm actually going to come over and pick the Sony AS100V, because on this particular footage of the bumpy road, I actually had an AS100V mounted on my handlebars, and I want to make sure I optimize any possible warping or issues with the wide-angle lens to its fullest capacity with the new functionality in Mercalli version 4. Next thing we need to do is we need to analyze this video and see what's going on. First, it's going to analyze the CMOS sensor, then you will see it correct the CMOS distortions, then it's going to analyze my camera movement. One thing to look at while it's working on the CMOS distortions is over here. You can see just how hard it's working on all those wobbles and jello that you see in the video. The more color you see over here, the harder this application is working. It's going to take a little while, so I'm going to speed it up, let you see it rip through there, and we'll pick it up when it's done. As you can see, while it's working, look at all the vibrant colors that are showing up in the CMOS map here on the right. That just shows you how bad that clip really was and how hard Mercalli is actually working. It's doing some pretty cool stuff in there. While this takes a while, it is still much faster and a better quality than any other stabilization techniques or software that I have found available out there for editors. So this is some pretty neat magic going on in here. Okay, we're done now, and as you can see, if I were to click my view source, I didn't really zoom in a whole lot. Look at that, very little. Let's go back to the beginning and let's see what our footage looks like now. Click the play button. We've made this clip a lot better and usable, but we can improve on it even further with some of the advanced techniques that we're going to cover in our advanced tutorial. A couple other things I want to show you while it's playing back. See this suppress button on the dashboard? When that button is turning red, that means Mercalli is hitting a threshold where it feels if it zooms in anymore, it may sacrifice some of the quality of your stabilized footage, so you may not get optimum stabilization in those particular sections. What I usually do is when I find those spots in red, I will slide my avoid border up just a little bit until it goes away, and then play on through it some more. If I see another one, it looks pretty clean. You can also see on our CMOS map imagery down here on this button, you're also seeing all the problems that it's fixing and what it's sensing in your footage. So I'm going to stop that. I'm going to zoom in on my timeline, and I want to show you one other thing. If we take this avoid border, and I'm just showing this as an example, and slide this down, see these red dots down here in our timeline? Those are like places where the suppress button is going off. Those are spots where Mercalli is having trouble, where it's having trouble keeping your footage in good shape. If you ever see that down there on footage that you're analyzing, just take your avoid border and slide it up and increase it, and as you can see I'm doing it, it's getting rid of those little red dots. It was at about 40, so I'm going to put it back up to, no, it actually went up to 42 or 43 because of that suppress. I'm going to put it back up around there, and we're going to leave it there. Now, we've pretty much got this particular clip processed the way we like it. So what I'm going to do next is export my content. And if you remember over here in our media bin, I've got 3 clips that I've been working with. I've got the first clip where I flew over my car. If I zoom out, I can find that content again right here. I've got the content where I was flying through the memorial. You can see that, and the content that I just worked on here. Okay, so we're going to come up here to export stabilized media. Now, a couple of things I want to show you on this particular screen. We can just click right here and start exporting, but what it's going to do is it's going to export your files right back into the directory where you found them. I don't like doing that. I like my stuff separated for clutter reasons. So I'm going to say export files to another directory. I'm going to come here and click on the folder button, and I'm going to go to my videos directory, Mercalli 4, and I'm going to make a new folder called finals. That's where I'm going to put my clips. As you can see now, it's going to go to that directory. The quality, there's different settings here, low, medium, and high. I've done some experimentation. The high and the medium are so close in quality you will probably not be able to sense much of a difference. So for speed reasons, I'm just going to select medium. Now here's another nice new feature in Mercalli version 4, the encoder settings. In the old version of Mercalli, previous to version 4, you got to export as a movie file or as an MP4. That was all you got. Well, we've got some extra options now. We can export as an MP4, a movie. We can make an MJPEG movie. We can export as ProRes, or you can even work with 4K footage in here and stabilize it and export it back out as an H.265 movie file. H.265 is a codec that's not just exclusive to 4K video. Yes, we can work with the 4K and H.265 files and export back to H.265, but you can also take your regular videos from any other format and export them as an H.265 file, which means you're going to get the same look in a much better compression, and so you're going to take up a whole lot less file space. So it's not just an option for working with 4K. It can also be used with regular footage to save on your file space. So there's some exciting new formats that you can export your footage in that will possibly streamline your edits depending on your edit system that you use for your main edits. I'm going to leave it on 264 because that's what my edit system likes the best. I'm just going to click out of here because I didn't change anything, and the settings stay. Now here's an interesting new twist for version 4 of Mercalli. Combine videos. What the new combined videos function does for us in Mercalli IV is gives us a storyboard feature where we can actually order the clips we've analyzed and get them in the exact order we want for export, so when we import them into our main project they'll be just right for us. Over here in the media bin you can see the 3 clips I've been working on. If I want to, I can move a clip up in the sequence, I can move it down in the sequence, and whatever we've got here is going to export in this order into one single long clip. If I want to remove a clip from that sequence and only use these 2 clips, I can unclick it and I will only get the 2 clips. It's a pretty neat feature and can streamline your workflow for when you need to import something into your main project that you've been working on in Mercalli. Another little thing that I learned the combined video option is good for is when you go to export your clip, it allows you to create a new file name, which to me is really nice. I don't like my old file name of the MAH00007.mp4 with some extension on it. I like to name it something like road construction bike ride or something like that. And so if I use the combined video option, it gives me a chance to rename my file even if I'm only exporting one file. So I like that option, and it solves one of the problems that I've always had with previous versions of Mercalli. I like to name my videos. Over here you've got similar options to what we had before on the analyze screen and the stabilize screen. We've got vertical compare, horizontal compare, or result. Just a word of warning, if you export with horizontal compare turned on, if you export with horizontal compare turned on, you will get a side-by-side video just like this one. Or vertical compare, you will get above and below video just like this one. That's not what we want in this case, so I'm going to turn on view result, and I'm going to hit the export button, and I'm going to enter a file name. Mercalli IV clips. And I'm going to hit save. Now it's going to do its export process. It's not terribly time consuming, but it will take a minute or 2 depending on how complicated and how long your files are. And we're all done. Now that we're rendered, we can watch our final clip, and here we go. We click on the play button, launches in Windows Media Player. This clip is pretty well stabilized now. There is a modest amount of that jello effect still in our clip, but we're going to work with that on our advanced tutorial and clean it up even more. This particular clip is pretty darn good. I love flying over stuff. It just looks cool. And this clip came out really nice. This one we can see in full frame and full motion. It looks really good as well. Okay, I'm going to close those, and we are back in Mercalli. I'm just going to close that down. That pretty much sums up our basic tutorial for the new version 4 of Mercalli. Again, some of the new things that are really exciting and new in Mercalli version 4 are the rolling shutter compensation and the ability to take your CMOS with different settings and get rid of some of that CMOS jello. Now in this clip with the bikes and the clip flying over my car back here that had the CMOS jello in it, when we go to our advanced tutorial here coming up shortly after the basic tutorial, we are going to cover the vibrations and waves, which will clean that stuff up even more, and this footage is just going to be nothing short of amazing when we're done compared to what we started with. So keep an eye out for that. Another thing that's very nice in version 4 of Mercalli is the camera optics option, where you pick the camera that the footage was shot with, and then when it's stabilizing, it knows how to process that wide angle footage and the warps from the fisheye look in a better way that does not mess up the stabilization as much and make it hard to watch. On the export options, we've got the new ability to select our different file types, which is a really nice addition. This combined videos is a little tiny addition that can really speed up your workflow. That concludes this tutorial. I hope you learned something and that you are able to get up and running quickly with Mercalli version 4 SAL+. Thank you.